Dean, thank you for that overly generous introduction. The first thing I want to say is my remarks will not be as long as they seem. You know, the dean asked me to tell you about my career, but she's already done that, so I don't know what to do. Let me give you some background information. First of all, I'm the son of Lithuanian immigrants. My mother's family was pretty well educated, but not very active in the world of commerce. But my father was poor from the Vilnius ghetto, and he was rather aggressive, hustled to get ahead. And I think I'm sort of a combination of those two things. I'm an only child, but all of my cousins have multiple degrees. I'm the least educated of all my cousins. Half of them are college professors and so on. But I've had an opportunity to send all their children to college as a result. I was born in New York City by parents without my consent, moved to Detroit at the beginning of World War II. I was not a very good high school student. I questioned everything, and high school teachers don't like that. But when I got to Michigan State University, I found that very stimulating because professors, I found, like to be challenged. Well, at Michigan State in my senior year, I thought I was going to go into service. So I convinced the state accountancy board to let me take the CPA exam before I was 21 years of age. My birthday was June 6th. They let me take it in May. And as a result, I can claim I'm the youngest CPA in the history of the state of Michigan. Let me tell you about that. I've had 4 different careers, and I'll tell you about them briefly. What you'll find in all of them, outside of my first career in public accounting, is I created things that didn't exist before, or I got engaged in things that I thought and others thought needed change. I was a CPA and practiced accounting for 2 years, and you already heard the vast compensation that I got after taxes, $67.40 a week, and the firm I was with had some home building clients that were doing very well, and I said, gee, they're not all that smart, I can do that too. So I found Don Kaufman, whose background was in construction, and at age 23 we formed Kaufman and Bro Building Corporation, which was the name then, turned out to be now KV Homes. I read a lot about the home building industry before I got involved. I visited home builders in other states and thought that what was happening in Detroit was as a result of home builders who did very well after World War II, but frankly weren't very creative and weren't very hungry. Detroit home builders then were building homes with basements because at one time they'd have coal-fired furnaces, so they put them in the basement, etc. But in Ohio, 100, 200 miles away, they were building homes without basements, but with garages and carports. So we were the first home builder really to build houses without basements, but with a carport. And we priced them. I think the opening price was $13,740, and vets could move in without any money. And the monthly payments were less than rent. So that's how we started. You already heard that I had to borrow from my father-in-law $25,000. We bought several lots, optioned more, and to our surprise, that first weekend in 1956, we sold out. And the rest, as they say, is history. We became a multi-market home builder over the years, and we were one of the few. We expanded to Phoenix, Chicago. In the mid-'60s, we went to France, also had operations at one time in Germany and Canada. And we're a lot of firsts. We're the first home builder to go public. We're the first to be listed on New York Stock Exchange. Home builders were using very expensive financing in the form of construction loans. We first convinced banks to lend us money as they would any manufacturer unsecured without getting in all the fees and charges of a construction loan. We're the first to issue commercial paper. We're the first to offer townhouses. And I think we're the first, I'm pretty sure, to become a Fortune 500 company in our industry. Home building, as you know, is a cyclical business, although we would tell the world that wasn't so. But I decided when our company had at that time a large market cap close to $1 billion, it was time to spend some of that currency. So in 1971, we started looking at other industries. And we said, who survived the Great Depression? Banks didn't. Mortgage companies didn't. Savings and loans. But insurance companies did. Life insurance companies did. So we ended up, after a search, buying a company called Sun Life Insurance Company of America, founded in 1890 in Baltimore. And that was a boring life insurance company selling death insurance and so on. And I said, gee, after several years, that's nice. It'll grow at 5, 6, 7, 8% a year. Why don't we find a niche? And the niche we found was retirement savings. The demographics were there. We knew the need was there. It was there then. It is there now. And we changed the company from a traditional life company to a retirement savings company, offering annuities, both fixed annuities and variable annuities, mutual funds, and financial planning services. And that turned out to be a great success, as you heard from the dean. We did a number of other things. In those days, I can't think of anyone that was really doing national advertising. And I decided that SunAmerica, we changed the name to SunAmerica, should really become a brand. So we spent an awful lot of money in national TV and other advertising. And as you already heard, in 1999, we merged or sold the company into AIG for $18 billion. I stayed on for a couple of years, and then ended up going from what was my third career into my fourth career, philanthropy. After the merger, we weren't poor before the merger, but after the merger, with our children having more money they can ever use, I said, what are we going to do? And I reached the conclusion that, one, we have to give back. And we have been giving back. We had a traditional foundation for some 30 years, and all we did was write checks. And we didn't change the status quo. We just gave to good things, what we thought were good things. And I started thinking about what are the biggest problems facing America. And I reached the conclusion that the biggest problem, in my view, is a sad state of public K-12 education, especially in urban areas. And as you know, for example, in this city, second largest school district in America, 730 or 40,000 children, 72% Latino, only 39% graduate. African Americans, only 49% graduate. And I was thinking about, this was 7 years ago, the world we live in. Where does that lead us? So I said, let's start a foundation in addition to one we already had to try to reform, improve K-12 education, which we have no background in. I've been engaged in higher education. At one time, I was vice chair of State University Board. I'm on the board of Caltech. I was involved in one of Claremont College's, Pittsburgh College, but never paid attention to K-12. And I said, well, we don't have any background in instruction or what happens in a classroom. And everyone had all these silver bullets at the classroom level. But I said, you know what, we're going to look from the top down. We're going to look at governance, and we're going to look at management. And as we looked at governance, which are essentially school boards, we were rather dismayed by the quality of people serving on school boards. They're either political wannabes, well-meaning parents, represent a labor organization, and the like. And I said, you know, they're making these decisions. In other nations, you have education ministries that have very bright people, whether it be scientists, engineers, etc. And therefore, we've got to improve governance. So we have a program, an institute to train newly elected or appointed school board members. That's fine, but having said that, I'm not a big fan of school boards. I do believe in mayoral control, and that's proven to be a godsend in Chicago, Boston, New York, and elsewhere. Then I said, well, if governance isn't so good, let's look at management. So we started meeting superintendents, who are really CEOs. And for the most part, what we saw were people that started as a coach or a teacher. And by then of their personality, political, or other skills, they became a superintendent 30 years later without any training in management, labor relations, finance systems, etc. So we said, let's see what we can do. We created a program to train superintendents. That program has been fairly successful. Half of the people we chose were from the military or other nonprofits, and half came from education. We probably produced more superintendents, we have, than anyone, including superintendents in Oakland, California, Fort Worth, Houston, Pittsburgh, Jacksonville, Charleston, and a number of smaller cities. And then after we did that, we said, you know, these people need at what we call the cabinet level, bright young people. And we didn't see any people from the Anderson School or any other B schools getting involved in education, management, or administration. So we created a program called the residency. And that's been very successful. And we have placed 54, I think the number is, or maybe it's a few more about now, of MBAs with several years' experience to work for people like Joel Klein, who's the New York City Chancellor, and as you know, Joe formerly was Deputy Attorney General of the United States for Antitrust, or people like Arnie Duncan in Chicago, etc. So that's been rewarding. We also we said, you know, we got to create some competition between urban schools. So we created the Broad Prize, which is the biggest prize in public education. It's $1 million prize that goes for scholarships. And that's been a success. In fact, some districts now, when they hire a superintendent, tell them one of the goals is you got to win the Broad Prize. In fact, Dallas published a very interesting pamphlet, or more than pamphlet, saying the road to Broad, how they're going to win the Broad Prize in 4 or 5 years. So the purpose of the prize was to get people to want to do better, have them share their best practices, and spotlight success where it existed. Our foundations got involved in scientific and medical activities, not by design, but it was all opportunistic. And it started in inflammatory bowel disease, where we found that young PhDs and MDs couldn't get any funding from NIH or elsewhere because they didn't have a track record. So we went into what I call the venture research business and have given 135 of those grants. And they're not that large, $150,000. And the people have now gotten 2 to 3 times as much from NIH once we gave them the seed money. Then we got involved in some other things. I happened to meet a man by the name of Eric Lander, who decoded the human genome for the U.S. government. I was in Cambridge, Massachusetts in October of 2001 for another reason. I was being inducted in the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. And I said, I'd like to see your lab. And this was a Saturday. And he said, come on over. And I was blown away with over 120,000 square feet of robotics and computers working 24 hours a day with the people from Harvard Medical School, MIT, are so excited they don't want to go home. So I said, Eric, when are you going to be done? He said, I'll be done in April of 2003. And then I said, what are you going to do then? He said, I want to start an institute, take all we've learned and get it to clinical application to bedside. That concept was very appealing. So we created, 3 years ago, the Broad Institute partnership with Harvard and MIT, which has about 600 people now, and is leading the world, I believe, in genomics. When California passed Prop 71, $3 billion for stem cell research, which, as you know, the federal government will not fund, I said that's an opportunity. It's an opportunity because the human condition can best be improved between genomics and stem cell research. And it also would be great for the California economy, especially Southern California. So we created the Broad Stem Cell Institute at a neighboring institution called USC. And we'll probably be doing something here on this campus because you've got a very impressive group engaged in stem cell research. In the arts, that's a wholly different story. My wife was a first collector. And my innocence as a collector ended when I became the founding chairman of the Museum of Contemporary Art downtown. And I learned something that Nelson Rockefeller once said. He said, I learned more about politics at the Museum of Modern Art than I ever learned in Albany. And we collected, collecting becomes an addiction. And once all our walls were filled with art and so on, I said, what do we do now? So we created a lending library foundation whose purpose it is to lend art to museums, university art galleries throughout the world, and that's been going on now for 21 years. I love the city of Los Angeles. I've lived here 43 years. It is truly a meritocracy, and I've been able to do things here that you couldn't do in other cities in America or the world because I don't have the right family background, the right religion, the right politics, and so on. So it's been a great opportunity to do a number of things. Whether it was creating the Museum of Contemporary Art with others, Walt Disney Concert Hall was frankly dead, ready to be buried. And Dick Reardon, a friend of mine who was mayor at the time, now I said we can't let that happen. And to do a number of other things. And what you'll find throughout my career is I never enjoyed presiding over the status quo. I always wanted to create something that didn't exist or make something better. And in addition to business, I mentioned MOCA. You heard about, they really didn't have a real MBA program, Michigan State University, so we gave them the money for that. We created the Broad Bioscience Center at Caltech, the Broad Institute at MIT, Harvard, and a number of other things. The biggest challenge we have is really, what are we going to do to improve urban education in America? And we've done good things, but it's not enough. So we're now thinking about 4 different initiatives, all of which will be difficult, and we may not achieve any of them. One, we've got to arouse the American people. They do not understand where we're going, that we're not going to be a competitive nation, that other countries are producing people that have far greater skills than our students do as a result of public education. So we're going to get engaged in a campaign, probably in partnership with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to try to get an awareness on the part of the American people and try to get the candidates running for president to talk not simply about better schools and better teachers, but nail them down to specific things. That's a work in progress. There's no National Institute of Education. If you're a school board member, chair of school board, or superintendent, there's no one place you can go to find the best way to use technology, the best way to teach reading and math, and so on. And there's very little money spent on research in those areas. So that has to happen, and hopefully we could do something in that arena. I'll tell you one other thing. I am working harder now than when I was running a Fortune 500 company. And frankly, enjoying it more. Whenever I complain to my wife, she says, you don't have to do anything. So I must enjoy what I'm doing. I'm frequently asked, what is the secret to your success? The answer is there is no secret. But I might mention about 6 different things that come to mind. The first is very simply hard work, especially when you're starting. Long hours, long days, weekends, vacations, a real commitment. And it means you have a series of trade-offs. I did not spend enough time with my family when my 2 boys were growing up. I admit that. I've had a very supportive wife for 52 years now. I hear a lot about balance, and that's nice to read about, hear about. But if you're really going to be successful in anything, you've got to be driven, you've got to be willing to spend the time at it. The second thing is to always have a thirst to learn more. I read 3 newspapers every day, in addition to looking at the net at night and so on, because that's where I get most of my ideas from. I don't invent them. But if you read enough, you get all sorts of ideas and you try to apply them. When I got involved in art collecting, I didn't simply go to galleries and museums and buy works of art. I did an awful lot of reading and studying, met a lot of curators and so on, visit artist studios. The third thing is you've got to have a vision in whatever you do. And as I said, I like to build things, to create things that didn't exist before, try to improve things that I and or others think need improvement. I've always been entrepreneurial. As a kid, before I discovered girls, I collected stamps, but that wasn't enough, so I became a dealer in postage stamps at age 12, advertising in all the stamp journals and getting letters from people thinking I was a grown-up. I've been restless throughout my career. I've been hard driving. I've driven people hard and gotten people to do more than they ever thought they could do. And they put up with that because they know I was as devoted to what I was doing as they were. And I wasn't someone that came in after they did and left before they did or had a clean desk. And I encourage all the people, and I encourage all of you to think big and not think that things are impossible. In whatever you do, you're going to take risks. If you don't take risks, you're not going to get very far. And you can't worry about failure. If not everything, I don't have 1,000 batting average. But if you do enough things and are devoted and so on, and you fail in 1 or 2, so what? Then the other thing is you can't be patient. Anyone knows me knows that I'm not a patient person. That's good and bad, as you might imagine. It means I get a lot of things done. It also means that I'm frustrating to some people. In fact, one said, you've got priorities. They're all number 1. The other thing, as I mentioned, you've got to take risks. I've always looked at the rewards versus the risk involved. I've never bet the farm, so to speak. I'd always look at the downside because I didn't want the enterprise to disappear if it didn't work out. And I also believe in giving back. And if you're successful, I think you have a real obligation to give back. And you feel good when you give back. You know, I was impressed with, we need business leaders at the highest and all other levels that want to give back. And I was really impressed when Bill Gates decided at the end of 2007, I believe, he was going to spend all his time at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And I think that was a brilliant move. So my answer is find a way to make a difference in whatever you do. So with that, now comes what I consider the fun part, answering whatever questions you might have, which I enjoy doing. Who has the first question? Yes, sir.
I have one in the topic of education. I'm wondering if you think it's a good idea for corporate America to want the government to increase the quotas so that they can bring in educated engineers and scientists from outside the country, saying that there's a shortage in the U.S. rather than spending the money to educate Americans here?
You probably have to do both. If you, the question is, should we increase the quota of educated people, be engineers, scientists, and the like, to come in the country, or should the government invest more money in educating people? And my answer is we have to do both. If you think about why America has succeeded to date, at the end of World War II, the world was in total disarray. We were bright enough to create several decades of intellectual capital via the GI Bill of Rights. Then after that, we were bright enough to have the brightest people from Asia, Europe to come here, whether it was the Caltechs, MITs, UCLAs, and so on. And they would stay here because there were not opportunities when they went back home. That's all changed. So we've got a bigger job to do today in educating our population than we've had in the past. Here's the next question. Yes, sir.
I can object. What metrics do you use to determine whether or not your superintendent training program is working or not? And why don't you tell us how you do it?
Have you ever heard the question? No? The question is, what metrics do you use to determine whether the superintendent's training program is successful? And the answer is very simple. It's student achievement. You measure student achievement. If these superintendents don't do better, or the principal and the principal training programs we support don't end up with superintendent's principals that don't do better than others that are not trained by us, we've failed. Yes, sir.
Okay. What do you feel are the most important trends for art in the 21st century?
I think I'm really a collector of 20th century, and I don't know the answer to that. I mean, art today uses every media known to mankind, whether it's video, photography, all sorts of things. Damien Hirst, who you may, he puts animals in formaldehyde, things that didn't exist before. Painting is still there, sculpture is still there, but I can't tell you what. I don't think there's any one school. If you go back historically, you had Impressionism, the Post-Impressionists, you had Cubism. And so on. I'm not sure there's any one school like that today. Yes.
What are your thoughts about privatizing the public school system in the United States?
I believe the public school system in America needs competition. And I think the reason we've got the best system of higher education, you've got competition. You people are competing with SC, Caltech, Stanford, etc. You don't have that in public education. So I believe competition in the form of public charter schools is very important. Private schools are important. Parochial schools are important. Any form of competition is good. For-profit schools, I had breakfast yesterday with Mike Milken, and he's a big believer in for-profit schools. And he points out what's happening in Dubai and other places. I'm not sure that's applicable. Do I believe in vouchers? Only if everything else fails. Washington, D.C., everything failed, so they ended up with, I forget, a couple thousand vouchers out of a student body of 60,000. We need change. We need change agents. We need competition. Yes?
Why do you suppose that other of America's wealthiest individuals aren't pursuing philanthropic causes like you are, and Bill Gates and Warren Buffett? And what would it take them to do so, in your mind?
Have you all heard the question? I don't know what it would take. Hopefully they'll follow Bill Gates and Warren Buffett's and other examples of people that are doing good, and as a result of doing good, they get great satisfaction, are respected, and so on.
Hi. What is your current level of interest in the Los Angeles Times? And if you were able to purchase the Times, what would your plans be?
Well, there's one problem with my interest or anyone's interest in the Los Angeles Times. They're not prepared to sell it. It's hard to buy something that someone doesn't want to sell. That could change. No, look, the newspaper business is not a good business with the net, et cetera. So the only reason to get involved in the ownership of a newspaper is a result of your interest in the city you live in. Because I do believe local ownership of a newspaper is important.
Hi, my name is Kadisa Phelps, and I'm a student here at Anderson. And I am concerned not only about what's going on in high school so that we have a clear pipeline of students coming into graduate school that are Latino and African American and more diverse population, but also with the numbers here at graduate school and nobody really talking about them. I heard from an alum today that was the class of 78 that there were 150 Latino students when he came to school here in 78, and there's 20 now. So it's a big problem that we feel, and what's going on that level, just to make sure that we have leaders and we have places for kids to go.
I think it's clearly an indication of failure of K through 12 public education. If we did as good a job as they're doing in China, India, European countries educating our children, the demographics of the incoming class would be very different.
Attributing the responsibility to the higher educational, because I saw the numbers. I'm at the law school also, and I saw when tuition doubled in 2003, the number of students that matriculated, Latino students, exactly go in half. We admitted the same number of students, but when the tuition doubled and there weren't funds to support those students, they went off to another institution, maybe not a state institution, or maybe didn't choose to go to law school at all. So what do you attribute to the higher education?
I'm not sure I can repeat your comments, your question. Again, it all starts with preschool, in my view. And it all starts with, you have a lot of excuses out there, lack of parental involvement, et cetera. I'm not sure how to answer your question other than that.
Although financially, it's become a lot harder to afford schools like UCLA Law School, Anderson School, for those that are brought up in families that don't have a large income. I think that was the question.
Access.
Okay.
Well, it would be nice to have greater support of all levels of education, including, community colleges, universities, both pre-graduate study and graduate study. Should we be spending more in education in America? Yes. Should we be spending it more wisely? Yes. I think, does a nation have its priorities in proper order? No. Yes.
So hopefully everyone can hear me. You mentioned your initiatives in education, and including the awareness campaign about education. It's a fairly complex subject. How do you educate the general public about a complex subject? What do you think is the best?
Well, it's going to be very difficult. We haven't started the campaign yet. But what you've got to do is you've got to get them to, if you remember the days of Sputnik, they were aroused then. They were aroused during a period of war. They don't understand that we're really, the Gates people don't like me to say, we're really in an economic war, and we're losing. But it's difficult because you can't get it down a 5-word bumper sticker. It's going to be difficult, but you got to get them aroused. Yes, sir.
Mr. Grove, my name is Gerald Brown. I appreciate the work you're doing, particularly as you mentioned in the inner city and education. I'm curious to know that as you move the needle to improve education in the inner city urban areas, how or what is your view on how to enhance employment opportunities? As a come from an entrepreneur, what do you think? Because you educate more people and there's no jobs for them.
Public education, in America, we become too egalitarian. A number of years ago, we decided that we're going to educate all children, assuming they're all going to go to college. Well, all children are not going to go to college. So they got rid of vocational education. We need vocational education in the 21st century. There's some things you can't outsource, whether it's plumbing, auto repairs, and a lot of other things. I know people at dealerships, they can't get mechanics. So what we've got to do is we've got to show these kids that are dropping out. If they saw a route to a good job, they wouldn't be dropping out. So I think we've got to reinvent vocational education so that people are either going to see, if they're not going to go to college, they're at least going to see a job at the end of high school or after year 2 of community college. Yes?
What do you do for fun?
Well, I have a trainer 3 times a week. I enjoy what I'm doing. My vocation and avocation sort of are combined, I guess. I enjoy traveling. I enjoy, things we're doing in the world of art. I enjoy meeting different people. Life would be boring if I spent all my time with business people and bankers and so on. So all the things I'm doing, life's a great learning experience, whether it's in science, medicine, the arts, K through 12 education. Yes, sir.
You recently put an elbow through a $139 million painting.
Who did? Steve Wynn did.
Steve Wynn, yeah. Have you ever had the experience of actually doing something to a painting that was really valuable like that?
I haven't had that opportunity because I don't have a painting worth $139 million. Yes?
Especially now that Bill Gates has gotten into the picture in the realm of higher education, do you see a role or increasing role for technology to enhance the educational experience among secondary school children?
Oh, absolutely. If you look
Why
at
isn't it being done more?
Pardon?
Why isn't it being utilized more than it is now?
Well, if you look at what children are doing on the internet, video games and all the rest, they're way ahead of what's happening in the classroom. That's why you need far different and better management. You need to the only change in American classrooms that in the last 100 years, instead of a blackboard, you got a whiteboard with marker pens. Everything's else the same. Same way to seat the kids, textbook, etc. It's all got to change. And it's not going to change with the system we have now. It may change as a result of competition. It may change if we empower governors and big city mayors. It's not going to change with school boards, often controlled by teachers' unions. They're what I call the, status quo reformers. They want to talk about reform, but they really are uncomfortable with changing the status quo. Yes?
Can you speak about your vision for downtown Los Angeles and how far away is it from being realized?
I believe since I got here, Los Angeles, as you all know, was developed very differently than other cities, whether it was New York, Chicago, Detroit, etc. And it's really a group of cities that sort of were woven together without any vibrant center. That's been lacking. It's finally happening. Population downtown's growing rapidly. As you may know, I chair the Grand Avenue project. That'll be about $1.8 billion. And that's, when I say chair, it's for the county and city which form the Joint Powers Authority. And they're going to go ahead with a 5-star hotel, 2,200 housing units, a 16-acre park from City Hall to the Music Center, lots of restaurants and other things. So it's happening. It's going to take time. Yes.
This mic.
Can you don't have a perfect batting average? Can you share the business failures?
Business failure. Well, let me think of one. I always had a dream of creating what I call a Model T of housing by manufacturing houses off-site and making them look like conventional homes and placing them. That quite didn't work out. At one time, our company had 11 different mobile home plants I tried to convert into manufactured housing. For various reasons, that didn't succeed. And well, obviously, we've introduced products that didn't sell, and we quickly discontinued them. And yes, sir.
I understand from some of my friends who are retired teachers that teachers spend an inordinate amount of time filling out forms, primarily for the federal government, and don't have time to teach. Do you agree? And if so, how can that be corrected?
Well, it all gets back to management and governance. I mean, if you have weak governance and weak management, all you do is create more and more rules, more forms to fill out, etc. I don't have any answer other than if you, well, you correct it by having what I call 21st century management, where someone looks at, if you have a workforce, whether it's in a school, manufacturing plant, you want those people to be as productive as possible and to get rid of all their non-productive activities or reduce those activities. But people don't think that way in education.
Mr. Braun, what do you see as the place of athletics for the kids, especially at the high school level in the urban environments?
Well, I'm not sure I could tell you what their place is. I think having physical activity, team sports, I think, it's all healthy. But on the other hand, we can't let kids in the inner city think they're all going to become NBA players.
I'm interested in just a little more about what you're talking about with the superintendents in terms of some of the basic management skills and some of the areas that you outlined where you feel the system isn't doing well. So you've mentioned vocational schools, which identifies a gap for those that aren't necessarily qualified. What about things like enrichment programs, foundations that are set up, locally to help with different kinds of initiatives, and also creative thinking, which may be getting kind of de-emphasized as there's more emphasis on testing and rote learning.
Help me out. What is the question? I'm sorry.
Kind of the other management skills that would be critical in a superintendent and some other areas of education which you think are critical to be addressed in your ideal vision, such as, you mentioned vocational training, for example. So things like after-school programs, enrichment, creative thinking, things of that. What are some of the other issues that you see that need to be addressed within the educational system that could be addressed by better training of superintendents?
Okay, again, if you look at superintendent CEO, The product is instruction. The result of that product should be student performance. All too much money and time is spent on non-productive activities. If you had an ideal system, you would have a lot more happening with principals that are better trained. Right now, a principal typically may have 5, 7, 8% of the budget that they control. If you had the right system, you would not have the big centralized bureaucracy. In New York City, in Mayor Bloomberg's second term and Joel Klein's second term, they're allowing schools to buy services where they can find them, not from simply the central office. Whether it has to do with office supplies and all sorts of other things. Right now, principals in our schools not only don't have the training, but they don't have any authority. If you think of what happens to a principal in this school district, they show up in September, they don't pick their own teachers. The seniority provisions in the collective bargaining agreements, coupled with all the work rules, they can't pick their team. There's so much that has to change. And it's not going to be easy, yes.
Who's your... Go ahead. Go ahead, you have the mic. Oh, I'm sorry, okay. Who's your favorite hero?
The dean says one more question.
This is it.
I'll take two.
Here it is. Who in history is your favorite hero?
Oh, I'm very fond of Harry Truman. I have a theory about presidents that the theory didn't work in one case. That president can be too intelligent, whether it's Woodrow Wilson or Jimmy Carter, etc. And they can't relate to people. The one person that really changed my view on all that was Bill Clinton, who could talk to a ditch digger or a nuclear scientist. Other heroes out there, Carnegie, establishing a library system in America. I don't have a whole list. Last question.
It's a dual question. On one side, I'm wondering, what do you think about the sort of philosophical educational approaches of Montessori schools and Waldorf schools, which seem to be, I know that they're growing rapidly now. I'm wondering if you have an opinion on those approaches to education. And then on the flip side, your other side of your career, I'm wondering what you see as the opportunities today, similar to what you saw in the 50s when you were looking at housing.
Well, the last part of the question, the opportunities today are in areas that I have no background in whatsoever. Clearly, they're in the sciences, they're in technology of all sorts. The world's changing very rapidly. Those are the real opportunities. I'm not sure today I would succeed in those areas. I thank you all for your attention.
Wait.